So, been a while, eh? Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another video. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Unoriginal Jess, and, wait, am I actually back? Oh my god! Yes, your boy is back, and better than ever, now with silly little sprites and everything. How cool is that? Also, speaking of ya boy, I'm a demi boy. My pronouns are he, they, it now and all that jazz. So, it'd be pretty neat of you to use them. Man, oh man, can I just say, it feels good to be back. Like, 3 years later, and I still basically have the exact same setup as I used to. Shout out to that Kind Master watermark in the corner, by the way. Okay, now for real this time. For those of you who don't know who I am, and honestly I couldn't blame you if you didn't, I'm known as that guy who made that What Your Favorite Sans Says About You video that randomly decided to get a lot of traction for some reason, or, if you want to be technical, Unoriginal Jess. I've been occasionally making and uploading videos on this channel, which has been around for about, let's see here, 8 years? This channel is 8 years old? Oh my god. Jeez. Time sure does fly by, doesn't it? Anyways, as new people may have guessed and old people already know, I've had a bit of an absence streak. I could probably go into detail about my absence, but, well, come on now. I know the real reason that you're here, and it's not to hear me grovel for your forgiveness. You're here for absolutely useless Undertale AU knowledge. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the good stuff, shall we? Chapter 1. What is an AU? Now, for those of you who are uninitiated, first of all, I have absolutely no idea how you're going to understand literally anything that I'm going to be talking about. And second, Undertale is a game that was created by Toby Radiation Fox and officially released on PC on September 15th, 2015. The game is well loved by many and has gained a large following in fandom over the years due to its compelling storyline and lovable cast of characters. The Undertale fandom is pretty well known for being a little unhinged, to say the least, as most fandoms are, honestly. And as a result of being so unhinged, the concept of Undertale AUs was born. Now, a few of you may be wondering, Jess, what the heck even is an AU? And to that I say, well done, diligent viewer, that is a great question. An alternate universe, or AU for short, acts as an alternate storyline which stems from a base series such as a TV show, a movie, a video game, etc., and changes it from the base material. The concept of an AU itself isn't something that was created exclusively because of Undertale though. It's something that has actually existed essentially since the dawn of fandom itself. AUs can come in many different forms, from comics to animations to fanfictions, and can be created by anyone, from a single person doing everything by themselves to collective effort from an entire fandom. But I'm starting to get ahead of myself. Generally, these universes act as expressions of a fandom's love for the source material, as well as an outlet for their creativity. Of course, you'll run into an AU or two of lesser quality every now and then. After all, not everything can be Fala Equestria levels of complex. See Cully Does Things' amazing video on that for more details, but there's still an incredible amount of well-known, and dare I say, even good Undertale AUs. Now, I do have to put it out there that it would probably be downright impossible for me to cover every single Undertale AU that's out there, and even more impossible to cover them all in just one video. So, today we're just going to go in depth on how the Undertale Multiverse works on a technical level as well as lore-wise, and cover some of the better-known AUs more extensively at a later date, the real Jim Simpson's history style. Is that kind of a deep cut? Probably. Anyways, believe me when I say that I will be talking about other AUs. After the response to my What Your Favorite Sans Says About You video, I feel as if it's practically my job now to school some of you on the Era Sans lore specifically. All of that aside though, here is an extensive breakdown on just how the Undertale Multiverse actually works. Chapter 2. The Undertale Multiverse. This one is relatively short. The Undertale Multiverse is a general term that refers to all Undertale AUs and several main spaces within it. This is the in-universe, or in-multiverse, area where everything canon to the multiverse technically exists. Aside from AUs, there are 3 other major locations/concepts which are important to the Undertale Multiverse. These are the Omega Timeline, the Anti-Void, and the Doodlesphere. Each of these areas all have their own unique purposes and relevance in the overall lore of the multiverse. Each location's specific functionality will be explained in their respective sections, starting with Chapter 3: The Omega Timeline. The Omega Timeline, created by Doku, is... Oh man, how is this one of the easier explanations? I joke, but as the story goes, approximately 1,000 years ago, the entity known as Corfrisk discovered the Omega Timeline's existence and claimed it as their own. Corfrisk is something known as an outcode, which means that they're a character who doesn't have a proper AU as their home and wanders around the outside code of proper AUs, in places such as the Anti-Void and of course their current home, the Omega Timeline. When initially discovered by Core thanks to their ability to timeline hop, the Omega Timeline was nothing more than a simple white void, very similar to the Anti-Void, which we will get into later. Corfrisk, being the kind, omnipotent being that they are, eventually started to bring the survivors of destroyed AUs, genocide routes, or extremely unfortunate circumstances to the Omega Timeline as a way to give these poorer individuals a new home. With the work put in by the many who stayed there, the Omega Timeline eventually began to flourish, gaining housing, gardens, forests, and even a lovely fake sky. It continues to grow and expand even to this very day. As nobody can enter the Omega Timeline unless invited by Corfrisk themselves because of its unknown location, or by entering a special kind of door, the Omega Timeline is often regarded as the safest place in the multiverse. This title is no small feat, as the multiverse is home to a being who is known as the God of Destruction, so even just living in a normal AU can be super dangerous, unless you're one of the lucky few who have managed to end up on the Destroyer's list of untouchable AUs. If you didn't manage to end up on that list, you better just hope that the Protector is on his way. Because if he isn't, well then, the end of your AU just might be waiting on the other side of a portal that leads directly to... Chapter 4: The Anti-Void. This one here, oh boy, this one's a doozy here, folks. Strap yourselves in. The Anti-Void, which was created by CQ, also known as the Crayon Queen, also known as Love for Piggies, well, the name itself can be pretty intimidating. It opens up many a possibility of just what in the world this thing could even be. To put it in the least complicated way, the Anti-Void is a blank white void which exists in the empty spaces of the multiverse. The longer and more accurate way of describing it is that the Anti-Void is actually more of an interconnected series of voids rather than just one. It exists as a nebulous space in between AUs where anyone who can create interdimensional portals can tread, though certain areas of it are claimed by certain individuals. The void itself exists as the name implies, an anti-void, meaning that it technically exists to represent anything and everything, as opposed to a normal void, which possesses nothing. Though the anti-void itself is actually completely blank. It's entirely derived of color, and everything from the ground to the sky is nothing more than a stark white. There's essentially no way of telling the passage of time, however, time does in fact pass in the anti-void. Those who spend a prolonged amount of time in the normal anti-void may go mad and have their code glitched out. It's theorized that the Omega Timeline may actually be a locked section of the Anti-Void, but this isn't confirmed in its canon. The Anti-Void may also be connected to the Doodlesphere, though this is also unconfirmed. There is at least one canonical resident of the Anti-Void, however, and that person is Error Sans. Error is a character who will get his own, well, maybe not entirely his own, wink wink nudge nudge, video in the future. But, to keep a long story short, Error, like Corfrisk, is an outcode. He's claimed the Anti-Void as his home, and because of that, the Anti-Void is extremely dangerous, as Error is often regarded as the god of destruction, or simply the destroyer. This part is more of a personal opinion, but I absolutely love the pure horror, no, not you, that the concept of the Anti-Void presents. The idea of being helpless alone, stuck in an empty, blinding white void, where you have no perception of where you are or what the time is, well, forgive the pun, but it's simply bone-chilling. It's no wonder that people are driven to insanity there. That is scary. It could easily cause a person to canonically suffer major psychological issues if left there for long periods of times by themselves. And... what was I talking about again? Oh right! That actually reminds me of something. All this talk about the Destroyer, empty white voids, major psychological trauma, and forgetting reminds me, we still need to talk about Error's counterpart. That shouldn't be too hard though. After all, he is the one and only resident of... Chapter 5. The Doodlesphere. Ah yes, finally some sense of simplicity. Okay, the Doodlesphere created by Comet looks like... the Doodlesphere looks like... the Doodlesphere looks like... God damn it. So, it turns out no one can really agree on just what the Doodlesphere actually looks like. So, I guess it's just one of those up to personal interpretation situations. And here I thought this one would be a little easier to describe. Egg on my face, I guess. Nevertheless, despite not having a solid description of what the place even frickin' looks like, its purpose is actually as rock solid as ever. The Doodlesphere acts as a mini-hub for the multiverse where any AU can be accessed easily. It essentially acts as a way to fast travel to AUs. The Doodlesphere itself was canonically created by a character in-universe. The Doodlesphere was, fittingly enough, created by Monster, who is often dubbed as the Creator, as well as the God of Creation and the Protector. Error's counterpart and most troubling nuisance, the one and only Ink Sans, unless you count, like, Fresh Ink or something, I guess. Ink, if you couldn't tell by his 3 different titles, oversees the entirety of the multiverse. He's the sole resident of the Doodlesphere and uses it to monitor the well-beings of AUs and quickly jump in to protect them if needed, as well as to occasionally fill his pain vials if needed. Like Error, Ink will eventually get his own video at a later date, so that's mostly all I'll say directly about Ink as a character for now. Though the Doodlesphere was created directly for and because of the Protector, Ink is not the only person able to enter the Doodlesphere. Though, much like the Omega timeline, the Doodlesphere is locked by default for safety reasons. Ink does allow for certain people to enter the Doodlesphere, but only a very select few, which is understandable considering all it takes is one rogue destroyer and boom! Half the multiverse is gone in an instant. Not really the outcome that Ink would want. Well, unless it's like Underverse Ink. That aside, now that we have all the important locations of the multiverse established, playtime is now officially over. It's time for us to start getting into the nitty-gritty details of... Chapter 6. How the Multiverse Works. So what exactly is left for me to talk about? Well, while we have gone over important aspects of the multiverse, I still haven't fully explained exactly how everything works within the multiverse. This section is about how the multiverse functions, the different powers that roll over it, and how everything I've already mentioned fits into the grand scope of things. Let's go ahead and start with how the multiverse functions on a day-to-day basis. As mentioned earlier, the multiverse consists of every Undertale-related AU, as well as 3 other locations, of which are the Omega Timeline, the Antivoid, and the Doodlesphere, which we went over previously. Whenever a person from our world creates a new Undertale AU, it shows up in the multiverse. Canonically, these people, who have been dubbed as the creators by Ink and the voices by Error, are the ones who are responsible for the existence of every AU in the multiverse. In some people's version of the canon, Ink is the sole creator of AUs, though in most, he simply helps to inspire creators and protect their creations. The Doodlesphere, as mentioned earlier, contains every traditional AU and is, in a way, where everything exists. But there is also a technical level to how the multiverse functions. You may have noticed that when I talked about the Antivoid earlier, I mentioned that one of the potential side effects of staying in the Antivoid for prolonged periods of time may result in a person's code getting glitched out. This is because the Undertale Multiverse is actually made of code. That's right, folks, the Undertale Multiverse is still very much a video game. Each AU is basically its own game world, complete with branching timelines just like the original Undertale. The reason why a place like the Antivoid is uninhabitable for most people is because it exists outside of the code, which is why it is capable of corrupting the code of people who shouldn't be there. This also relates back to outcodes, which are beings I mentioned earlier who exist, as the name implies, outside of the code of regular AUs. In order to be classified as an outcode, a being needs to have code that isn't attached to a specific AU. Let's take, for example, Toriel from the original Undertale. As mentioned before, Toriel is from the original Undertale. meaning that she is connected to a specific universe, which also means that her code is attached to it. That specific version of Toriel is supposed to exist in that specific version of Undertale, but that doesn't necessarily mean that her code will immediately begin to corrupt if she was somehow transported to a different AU. The only time a character's code could really glitch out would be if they ended up in a space where they really truly aren't supposed to exist. Say, like the empty spaces between the universes. This is actually directly how you get characters like Error, a person who had an AU that they called home at some point in time, but after winding up in the Anti-Void, eventually became corrupted. Speaking of Error, I mentioned earlier that he and his counterpart Ink are known as the gods of destruction and creation respectively, but I never actually went into detail on what exactly those roles entailed. Again, these two have their own video dedicated to just them coming out soon enough, but to keep it brief, Ink and Error are only two of many gods that reside in the Undertale Multiverse. Error specifically is in charge of destroying AUs in order to keep the multiverse in balance. On the opposite end of that spectrum, Ink is in charge of helping creators maintain their AUs by doing things like protecting them, keeping creators inspired through the creative process of making an AU, and occasionally, depending on your interpretation of the canon, even helping bring creators' ideas to life. Both Ink and Error, like many gods, have special abilities pertaining to their roles in the multiverse, and because of their conflicting jobs specifically, are often at odds with each other. If too many AUs are created, it will inevitably cause the multiverse to overload and start to collapse in on itself. But at the same time, the multiverse still needs to have AUs in it, so it's not like everything can just be destroyed. Ink and Error have to maintain a balance of creation and destruction in order to ensure that the multiverse stays stable, and thus access their roles in the multiverse. Along with Ink and Error, there are many other protectors, destroyers, and miscellaneous gods that oversee the multiverse. Ink is often depicted as a member of a trio of protectors, known as the Star Sands, which consists of Ink, obviously, as well as Blueberry or Swap Sands and Dream Sands. Blueberry isn't a god, however, he is a protector. Dream, on the other hand, is a god, and a very important one at that. Dream Sands, created by Joku, is known as the god of positivity and the prince of dreams. He has an aura around him that makes people feel positive emotions and is in charge of letting people experience positive emotions and allowing people to have good dreams. His twin brother Nightmare is the exact opposite of him. Nightmare is the god of negative emotions and the king of nightmares. His aura makes people feel, you guessed it, negative emotions, and he's responsible for allowing people to experience said negative emotions, as well as his namesake, nightmares. Nightmare, like his brother, actually has a gang of his own as well, who are typically either known as the Bad Sanses, the Bad Guys, or just Nightmare's gang. The actual members of Nightmare's gang is actually another one of those up to interpretation things, since it usually varies by a member or two. The general consensus is that Killer, Dust, and Horror, who are together known as the Murder Trio, are essentially always considered to be a part of Nightmare's gang. Besides those three, there are usually about 3 other people who are considered to be one of the bad guys, and those 3, from most common to least common, are Cross, Error, and Undertale Sands, also known as Fel, Red, or Edge. These 3 aren't always a part of the group, and whenever Error is featured, it's usually more of an occasional alliance type deal rather than Error being one of Nightmare's subordinates, but they still show up from time to time. No one in the gang except for Nightmare and Error are gods. Speaking of gods, what do you think about them? Do you like them? Yeah? Well, I've got good news for you and bad news for me, buddy. There's a whole AU of them. Reapertel is an AU where your favorite cast of Undertale characters are all literal gods. Since there's kind of a lot to cover here, and this video is long and info-dumpy enough as it is, I'll try to be brief? Alright. Asgore is the god of the sky and is the father of all gods. Toriel is the goddess of life and is also, dead, apparently. Hello? Asriel is also dead, but he's always dead, so that's normal. He was formerly the god of hope, and now, as Flowey, is the incarnation of despair. Ugh. I can feel the sins of my Danganronpa phase crawling up my back. Gaster is also here, apparently, and he's the god of magic and, according to the wiki, either the god or keeper of balance. Not really sure about that one. Next up, we have Garrison. Yeah, you know, Garrison, that random shopkeeper you meet in Waterfall and is rarely ever acknowledged despite the fact he knows stuff about the lore. Yeah, that guy. He's the god of wisdom. Even the wiki barely has anything down about him except for the fact that he's a guy, he has green eyes, and that he's the god of wisdom. Which is honestly kind of sad as it is funny. After Garrison, we have Alphys. Yes, I say Alphys, not Alphys. It's right, Toby Fox confirmed it, look it up. She's the god of knowledge. Undyne, of course, is the goddess of war and bravery. Sans and Paps are gods of death, with Papyrus acting as the god of painless death, and Sans being normal death. This version of Sans is usually nicknamed either Death or Reaper by the fandom. Nufstablook is the god of music. Groby is the god of Harith, which, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, because I didn't, is, according to Google, either the floor of a fireplace, the area in front of a fireplace, or a symbol of one's home. So basically, he's the god of fire and things that represent home. Muffet is the goddess of fortune, because of course she is, and Kara, Chara, Kara, whatever, and Frisk aren't really full-blown gods per se, but Kara was an acolyte of faith, which means they were faithful to the gods. However, they eventually became corrupted and became the agent of chaos, violence, and darkness. Frisk is simply known as the demigod of mercy or the emissary of mercy. Okay, that's all the main cast of Reaper Tale. Thank the gods that we're done with that, but even so, following that, there are still many other gods. There are so many other gods. I've gone over a lot already, so I'll just breeze through a few more of the well-known gods. These guys aren't necessarily gods who rule over specific traits or concepts like creation, emotions, or death, but are considered gods because of the traits and qualities that they possess that make them above your average person. Not all of them are like this though, so I'll still specify what they rule over if I need to. Okay. Corfrisk, who I talked about earlier, is considered to be a god, which is unsurprising considering they discovered and developed the Omega Timeline. Aside from them, other at least semi-well-known gods are Era 404 and various gods who are labeled as creators. These include the creators, obviously, who I talked about during the section about the Doodlesphere and earlier in this section, Temmie Chang, who helped in the making of the original Undertale and did many of the sprites for the game, and lastly, the annoying dog, who acts as a stand-in for Toby Fox himself. Would you believe me if I said that this still wasn't all of the gods? Because it isn't. If you want to know every single god in the Undertale Multiverse, then the various Undertale wikis will be your best friends. Because if I plan on actually ever releasing this video on time, I can't possibly cover them all here. I did make sure to cover the most important / well-known gods here in this video though. So since this video is meant to give new people enough information about the basic multiverse so that they aren't totally lost when interacting with the fandom, who I did mention should be the main gods that you'll probably be hearing about in the fandom. So all the gods I've mentioned, and all the ones I haven't, all oversee the multiverse and play a part in how it functions on a daily basis in some way. And now, with the definition of AUs, the Undertale Multiverse, the Omega Timeline, the Anti-Void, the Doodlesphere, the code that everything is made of, and the gods who rule over it out of the way, we are finally done with this video's information. Congrats! Now you know how the Undertale Multiverse works! Yay! But your journey for useless Undertale AU knowledge doesn't have to end here. In fact, if you're planning on sticking around, this silly little video is only the beginning. But this is, however, the end of the video. I just wanted to thank everyone here for just watching, honestly. Reviving this channel is something that I've wanted to do for a really, really long time. And so to everyone who helped make this video possible, like my friend AJC for being my test audience and being the composer for my outro music, my wonderful partner Isabel for just, supporting me through this endeavor, and really just, I really mean everyone who is watching this video. Thank you so much to everyone who decided to give this video the time of day from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for wasting some of your life watching this video about Undertale AUs. It really, really does mean the world to me. This really wouldn't have been possible without all of you. Procrastination and burnout really suck, but I'm glad that I got this video out regardless. I hope you all enjoyed watching. If you did, then I'd appreciate if you did all the YouTube things like liking and or subscribing and all that stuff. And honestly, whether you enjoyed watching my video or not, I hope you all have a good day. Stay determined, knock 'em dead, darlings. You've been a great audience.